Hello, Melissa Crook here with the F.E.E.L podcast. So glad to have you here listening with us today. We've got ways to engage for you with this new episode, Breaking the Caregiver Cycle, Self-Awareness, Survival Mode, and Loving Fiercely with Lynette Weldon. Do you feel like you're overworked or don't have any time in the day for yourself? Start with small increments of time, like 5 or 10 minutes, to do something for you. That could be listening to your favorite music, just some quiet, a little time outside, hearing the birds and the wind and feeling the sun on your face. Read a couple of pages of your book, write down your thoughts, or just rest. Your time is yours, and it's up to you to take control of it. We hope this gives you some thoughtful ways to engage as you're listening and really participating today in this new episode with our friend Lynette Weldon. Thanks so much for being with us. Hello and welcome to the F.E.E.L podcast this week. I'm here with a friend who is new to the podcast side, but she has been with me before in our panels on our radio show, and her name is Lynette Weldon, and I met her through our good friends at Podmatch, and she is going to give us her story, her resources, everything about it. It's a topic we've discussed before here with our friend Erin Copeland. Lynette brings another angle and another experience to the conversation. And we need multiple resources and voices involved in this conversation because it is a topic that more than any other time, and you'll hear the reference, and this is going to kind of give away what we're going to be leaning into, the sandwich generation, where many of us are caring for both our parents and our children simultaneously. And so there's also that impact of not understanding the impact that's going to have on you, that there's resources available to you, that it's okay to ask for help. And so that gives you a little leaning and understanding into it's what we're going to be addressing today. But Lynette describes herself as dedicated, driven, passionate, loyal, and a fierce advocate. Lynette Weldon, welcome to the F.E.E.L podcast.
Thank you, Melissa. It's great to be back.
It's great to have you here. I always like having you. You've got so much to share and so much wisdom and so much, your background is so nuanced within this space. And I think this is a space where you don't always expect in your life, this is in your life plan that you're going to see yourself in. But then, life happens. And so, but let's get into it. Let's start with, before I give the whole thing away, let's start with your story. Talk to me about prioritizing self-care in your life and your journey with that, because it's been a journey. You have been in a caregiver role in a variety of ways so much of your life. Some things were more expected than others. Through that, you have had to learn the importance of this because so many times we are so concerned about those that we're taking care of, and there's all kinds of resources for them, and nobody's checking in on the caregiver. So, so talk to me about your journey in this arena.
Oh, okay. Well, it started when I was a preteen watching my mom go through the position of being a caregiver. My stepdad had a brain tumor, had multiple brain surgeries, radiation, chemotherapy, all of it. And it happened just like that, And so I watched what she went through trying to navigate all of it because there's so much that comes with it. Right. And, I journal a lot and I've been writing. And one of the things that I remember is looking at my mom, feeling just really bad for her, but on the same hand thinking, oh my God, I don't ever want to be in that situation. Because I watched her struggle. Well, fast forward, to my mid-20s, and I had a daughter who was born with Down syndrome and a hole in her heart, and then was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 8 months old. So that just changed my whole life completely on a dime. And then, Melissa, I don't know that I've talked to you about this before, but excuse me, there's a whole another group of invisible caregivers. And they're the ones who love somebody with an addiction, you know?
Yeah.
They're doing
Yeah.
the exact same thing. And, I've been doing a lot of like soul searching because I'm trying to put a lot down in writing. And, I was married to somebody who was an alcoholic and had some severe issues with depression. And so I didn't even realize that I was also a caregiver to him.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways that we take care of the people that we love. And a lot of times I don't think that people even realize that's what they're doing. And so then how do you put a name on that? And how do you try to find help or support for it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And I think too, with the stigmas that are involved in that, especially when you're dealing with someone with addiction, so many times you're living in secret with that. You're not wanting people to know because you don't want them to think badly of your loved one. You are, there's just so many things. That come into play. And then also within the caregiver space, especially when it's a family member, we're like, well, this is what I do. This is what I signed up for. You care for the people you love. And you don't see where it crosses over into, no, this is, excuse me, above and beyond. This is not the normal showing up and supporting each other. This is a whole other level. And it is understandable and totally valid that you need help.
Yeah.
And even to know that there's resources, but we don't. Yeah. I've talked about this with Aaron before. You got to get to a point where you see yourself as a caregiver because.
Right. Well, and it sneaks up on them, it sneaks up on them. And before they know it, they're like in the situation and they don't know what to do anymore. And they don't even recognize themselves. And then they feel guilty because they don't like it. Right.
Right.
And they're afraid to tell anybody how they really feel because they don't want to be judged. There's so many things that go into it, but and the word burnout with caregivers, that's like a bad word because if you say burnout, that means you failed, right? That's how they view it. So, but we just have to keep on the topic and keep sharing, I think, as a caregiver who's been there and been through this and helped other caregivers that, there's no shame in needing help, asking for help. There's no shame in actually deciding, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting to a point where it's beyond the scope, because we had this experience and it's a little different, but my father-in-law was caring for my mother-in-law with Alzheimer's for several years. And it got to a point where my husband and I went up there the summer before we made this decision to just be there. We had a gap in time for a couple of months where we had some time and space off from work and kids were off doing internships and whatnot, where we were like, somebody needs to be present for a couple of months because there's some things that are starting to occur here that we need to have another set of eyes on. So we did that. And it was getting to the point where we were like, we don't want your memories of her to be this. Y'all have been together for 60 plus years. And it's okay that this has gotten to be too much. And it's okay that it's not enough just to have someone come in. We started with having someone and come in and clean the house and those things, but it's okay that it has gotten beyond the point where it's time to put her in a place that we pay to care for her and take that burden off of you. So that's such a difficult conversation too, but it comes in all phases of life. There are kids who end up being caregivers for their parents due to various things at very young ages. And they just think that they're kids that are being asked to help out because they don't know even that they can ask for help. And it's not till later when they're in therapy and realize that they had to grow up way too soon. If they're able to have access to that they, so even letting them know any age, whether you are 10 or 85, that there are resources and everywhere in between. There are resources
Yeah.
out there to help you and people that want to help you. And it's okay to ask for help. And just
Yeah.
because you love someone and they're your family member doesn't mean that it's not okay to, and it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad, frustrated. It's okay to be burned out and tired of it. That does not make you a bad person. That makes you human. And
Human. Yeah.
I think it's so important. So when you have your daughter and you got the double whammy because Down syndrome is one thing, but childhood diabetes, those are two big things by themselves. And then
Huge. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
huge. Because I've known friends that have dealt with both. I've never known friends that have dealt with both collectively. Like they've either had the childhood diabetes or the Down syndrome.
Yeah.
So you get this diagnosis in the first couple of years, and she's not your only child, by the way. So you're trying to be, all of a sudden you're in this space, and I mean, I think of myself. I mean, I had our kids and, in our mid to late 20s. I mean, our brains are barely fully developed by that point, let alone this, let alone this whole other like overwhelm of what do we do and how do I do this? And the attention to detail it takes to help them be as healthy and thriving as they can be. So, just dealing, I think also to something that doesn't get talked about enough in this space is the mourning of what you thought was going to be, what used to be is valid. And it's not something that you should feel bad about, but boy, there's a stigma around that too, I think.
Yeah. With a lot of the women that I've worked with, I kind of have to like pull that out of them. I have to start sharing that, I remember what that felt like, and there is a grieving process and it's okay. I think people, when they think about grieving, they think about losing somebody, somebody passing away. And there are so many other areas in our life that we grieve. And most people don't realize that's what's happening. Right.
Yeah.
And, if you think about grieving, there's all the emotions that you go through, denial, anger, depression. I mean, all of it. And so when you're a caregiver and you're going through all those emotions, there's so much guilt that comes with having those emotions because they don't think that it's okay and that they should, but your life changes instantly.
Absolutely.
I don't care if you have a child born with a disability, if your spouse has, say a stroke or, another diagnosis, everything about what now changes. There's no going back. There's no controlling anything in that arena at all, So you have to let yourself grieve. You have to let yourself understand that it's okay that I feel sad. It's okay that I'm angry. I can't go do XYZ anymore. Now I got to figure this out. And what am I going to do? And, all of that is just, it's okay,
Yeah. And wouldn't you say that's part of the self-care process is allowing yourself space to process, move through and feel and be supported within that? I mean, that because you can't carry that. I mean, you can carry it, but it's going to come through. Your body can't carry that forever. And, you and I both know it's going to show up in a not good way at some point. But also, too, when you're able to hear someone else say, I've been there too. I've felt that too. So I think I like the importance of community in this is so to have other people around you that understand your experience that you can be just boldly honest with because they will understand it and they won't, that you're safe. You're not going to be judged because, again, there's just so many stigmas about how we treat and handle. There's such a history, I think, generationally of families already being very enmeshed, very codependent, very trauma bond informed anyway. And then you throw in this other layer of dynamics. And so when you try to talk to those families and groups with that kind of history, their attitude is, it's blood. You show up and you die on the vine for them.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but at what cost? Because if I'm dying
Right.
on the vine, no one's getting the best version of me.
No,
It's
you can't do anything well then,
no.
nothing.
And it's not fair to you or anyone that
No.
you're in relationship with. So I think also, we already are trying to change the narrative around that for just women in general every day. And then you throw on this next level layer of the
Mhm.
caregiving piece and what goes with that. It's even for you to be fresh and on point for all the things that are necessary to take care of this person well. It's even more important for you to have that help and support and or things get missed, things get forgotten, interchanges in relationships become tense and add stress to a situation that doesn't need more stress.
Exactly.
It's already, that's a natural existence that
Yeah.
already is there.
Yeah.
So
That's another whole topic too.
yeah, oh,
But
I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I don't understand where people came to form the belief that it's selfish to take care of yourself.
I know. It's
You
so
know,
counterproductive and backwards.
it is totally. And, you can't self sacrifice forever. If you want to be here for the long haul and be, a good caregiver, a good wife, a good friend, a good parent, a good anything, you have to learn that. You have to take care of yourself. And it is not selfish. That drives me insane when I hear some of these women think or say, well, I can't take a day for myself. And I'm like, why not? You
Yeah.
know,
That's who.
maybe you can't take a whole day, but you could take an hour, you could take,
Yeah.
and it's just, they just, they're so used to doing everything for everyone
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
that they can't even see the possibility that there could be time for them.
Yeah, and changing the narrative around, they've created so many times, and we're so guilty of this in so many spaces. We create this space where people have gotten used to us showing up that way. We never give them
Yeah.
the chance to see if they can
Yeah.
show up and help because we've taken over everything. So then it becomes that point of like, oh, okay, I can release some of these things, and I am going to have to release them and also be okay with how they do them, like whatever that might
Yeah.
be. And and not
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
release that. So that's a big thing, but
Mhm.
also communicating it because so many times too, I think the communication piece, like I need an hour once
Mhm.
a day to get outside and walk around the neighborhood
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to run down and get coffee with the friend. I need an hour a day to do whatever it is I want to, or whatever, 2 hours, call it whatever it is.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
this 2 hours every day. So I need someone, or maybe there's multiple someones, make a
Mhm.
rotation. People take
Mhm.
turns that during that block of time, every day, every other day, you know, once a week at the very minimum. But I would challenge you, take 2 hours once a week, and then within every day, find 5 minutes to 30 minutes, to just have, because
Yeah.
those little things add up too.
They
Taking,
do. Yeah.
it doesn't have to be this big, grandiose thing
Mm-mm.
that creates all of these obstacles in your schedule, but be mindful, put it in your calendar, make it a priority, identify those things that
Mhm.
nourish you. And
Yeah.
because also too, how do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered is someone who took care of herself well and showed up well for others, or someone
Yeah.
who was just ragged and tired and angry and frustrated
Yeah.
all the time, showed up at all the things, but never with joy or contentment or a smile
Yeah.
because she was so strung out all the time. So
That's
I
a
think
really good way to put it, Melissa.
I
Yeah.
think
It
that's
really
something
is.
that I've
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to, how do you want your kids to remember you? How do you want
Yeah.
your friends, anybody?
Mhm.
Think about that. What is the legacy that you want to
Yeah.
leave behind? And none of us want to be remembered as the second example. We all want to be remembered as the first example. So that's going to require some action on your part and support from those around you. And if you
Mhm.
don't feel like you have that support, great. We've got resources for you to
Yeah.
get you that
Yeah.
support. And then, because so many times we teach people how to treat us so many times. So even if
Oh,
you
yeah.
feel like you can't
Yep.
ask anyone around you for that help, when they start seeing you seek out that help in other places, they might be more inclined to be like, well, why didn't you just ask me? And you might be surprised,
Right.
like, well, I didn't know that I could, or I didn't know you needed
Right.
help. It's so there's a responsibility on
On both parts.
both
Yeah.
parts to
Yeah.
communicate, even and when things change, when you are changing when you really start addressing what you need, that may take a few times around the bend to communicate that, because they're not used to you showing up that way.
No, they're not. Yeah.
Yeah. And so everybody's got to so when in your journey, when was it that you were like, I've got to put some practices in place because I can't just go 24/7 hard all the time. It's not sustainable.
Oh, I can remember several times that I thought something's got to change,
Uh,
and, I'll just share right now that for 10 years, I lived in fight or flight mode.
yeah.
I just put my head down and powered through and thought one more day, one more week, one more whatever. And, now I have, some pretty serious autoimmune issues from that, because that's what it does. It,
Yeah.
it affects your body.
Yeah.
You think you're young and tough and you can do this, but you can't do it like that for so long. And I
Right.
think the biggest moment for me was recognizing that I was snapping at my kids,
Mm.
and
Mm.
I love them to death. And,
Ah.
I'll never forget the one moment that I turned and I snapped at my daughter and her brother, Justin,
Mm.
and I mean, it wasn't like abusive or anything like
Right.
that, but just probably the look on my face, because I was
Mhm.
so on edge and fried that,
Mhm.
I turned around and snapped. And even to this day, when I think about the look on their face, it's like soul
Mhm.
crushing, because
Yeah.
that's not who I am, but
Mhm.
that's who I became when I wasn't taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And, because I just always wanted to be a mom. I love
Mhm.
being a mom. I love kids. I love teenagers. I love them all. I just loved being a mom. And so that was the biggest turning point right there. Like, I'm going to cry
Mhm.
talking about it now, because that's how painful
Mm.
it was for me.
Yeah.
And I just decided, okay, something's got to change. I can't do this anymore. And I
Yeah.
just started doing little things,
Mhm.
throughout the day. And I tried to look at things different. And I think
Mhm.
one thing for me that was hard was learning that I couldn't control everything. I couldn't control situations and circumstances that came up. The only
Sure.
thing I can control is how I feel and how I respond,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so when I started to look at things different and ask myself different questions, I started
Mhm.
showing up different,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That awareness piece, I think, but I think as parents, I mean, I can tell you, I don't know a parent that doesn't have that moment where, because it's just really been the last, I feel like 10 years that we've even started having these conversations about
Yeah.
prioritizing our wellness. And I mean, my husband and I both have those moments where we snapped at different points. We're like, oh God,
Mhm.
ooh. I mean, it just
Yeah.
sticks with you. It's so painful, but also
Yeah.
as a wake up call to like, all right, there's
Mhm.
some things that need to be addressed here. And so you took that. And again, going back to those little things. One of the things that I hear a lot when I'm working with women, and I'm sure you hear this too, is like, I don't have time. I'm like, let's look at your
Oh,
calendar and I'm going to help
yeah.
you identify time. We're going to look at
Mhm.
what you've got here. We're
Yeah.
going to see what's necessary, what's not.
Mhm.
Also, where can you get help?
Yeah.
Who else can do that besides you?
Right. Right.
Um, or
Exactly.
and we're going to start finding 5, 10, 15 minutes throughout your day where you can step outside, you can close the door in the bathroom.
Anybody can find 5, 10, 15 minutes. Anybody. I
Exactly.
don't care who you are. You cannot
Yes,
tell me you can't find that. We all have the same amount of time,
we
right?
do.
And
We
so
do.
that is the worst excuse to use with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
If you talk
Me
to
too.
me, and I'll tell you what I got on my plate.
Hmm.
I got 40
Hmm.
horses out there in a ranch and a business and kids and grandkids. Don't come
Yeah.
to me and tell me you don't have time,
Yeah.
because everybody has the time. They do.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
spot on with that. Who can you delegate to? What can
Yeah.
you delay? What can you just
Yes.
check off and say, I don't really need to do that,
Right.
and get it off your list?
Yeah. I mean, because what
Yeah.
I always, what's in alignment with who you are? Because so many times there are things on the calendar that are like, that was in alignment with me 10, 15 years ago. And I've just
Yeah.
kept doing it. But I'm like, well, then why are we still doing it? It's time to
Right.
turn it over and let someone else have the opportunity. Like, we
Yeah.
just don't need to do that anymore. And then
Yeah.
once you start creating those little moments, you all of a sudden realize you go from feeling stuck to feeling like you have choices. And I think
Yes.
that creating the opportunity where you can get people to see their choices versus what
Right.
they are stuck with or have to do
Yeah.
is such a big part. I'm sure you see that so much. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when you can take control of your time, it changes
Yeah.
everything. And you
Yes.
feel empowered. You feel like,
Yeah.
that is something that you can control, people. You can control where your time and your attention and your energy goes,
Yeah.
you know?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this really, and we've already really addressed this next one, but confidently setting boundaries. When you got to that point and you realized something's got to change, that required you to, set some boundaries around your time and when you were going to give it to others versus when you were going to give it to yourself.
Yeah.
How much time did that take? Because boundaries really isn't a word we started using until recently. So we just called it
No.
something else. But it's essentially like creating space and being protective and making choices about that. So talk to me
Yeah.
about that boundaries journey and being able to like communicate and create that space so that you could do better for you.
Well, I'll be honest, that was a hard one for me to
Yeah.
learn how to say no and set boundaries,
Mhm.
especially how I grew up,
Yeah.
and so, like I said, that was a hard one. And it's looking at all different areas of your life,
Mhm.
and again, asking different, why do I believe that I can't say no? And why do I believe I'd be a bad person if I did,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then recognizing, like people and places that sucked my energy, that didn't make me feel good,
Mhm.
and I
Yep.
was just showing up for them or because that's what I thought I was supposed to do,
Yeah.
as a good person. And
Yeah.
so,
Good person. We moralize the heck out of these things. And
yeah,
and
yeah,
we really have and just that unpacking what's actually true versus what's just a narrative that is not serving us.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that played a lot into it. And, you know, and really realizing that every time I said yes, I was saying no to myself. And if I'm
Yeah.
constantly saying no to myself, how am I going to take care of me so that I
Yes.
can be a better mom and a better caretaker? And,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah. And I think it's even more difficult for women who are my age, I'll say 50 and above, um,
Mhm.
because of the way we were brought up and what we were
Absolutely.
told. And,
It wasn't modeled to us, and it was actually
no,
frowned upon. We were told to be
yeah,
show up for everybody else first, putting yourself first is
yeah,
selfish,
mhm,
serve, 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 serve. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
but at what point do I get to recharge, and serve myself so that I can continue to
exactly,
serve?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I just did a workshop on setting boundaries and saying no. And I literally said to them, if this was not modeled to you when you were growing up, you probably have no idea what it looks like,
Right.
And that is the truth. If you didn't see it growing up, you don't know what actually, setting a boundary and sticking up for yourself and saying no and all that, you don't know how to do it. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you have to learn and then you have to practice.
Yeah.
You really do. It's like building a muscle. You got to practice that. And then all of a sudden it's okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's ways to say it that are nice, that aren't like, you
Yeah.
know,
It
there's
doesn't have to be this
compassionate.
abrupt.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
especially I think
sure.
going back to when people are used to you showing up and you make a shift, having some
Yeah.
patience with that. And after a few times, if they're still not, because you also find out in those scenarios who's really for you and who's just there
Yeah,
to gain something from you. And sometimes you have
for
to make
sure.
some shifts in the people you surround yourself with to make
Hmm.
sure that you're surrounding yourself with people that want you to be as well as much as you know you want to and need to be well. And that can be
Right.
hard too, but it's also being,
Yeah.
that's not selfish either. That is self-care, and that is
Yeah.
caring for your well-being, which then allows you to be well for all those that you're in relationship with. It's all connected.
Right. Yep. And not everybody
Yeah,
is meant to be in your life forever either. You know?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some relationships have a season. I've talked about that many times
Yeah.
on here, but that's a hard nut for people to swallow because, again, I think it
Yeah.
goes back to generationally what we've seen, especially depending on the connect points and real and like,
Mhm.
and we don't have to vilify anybody. The season has just passed and it just isn't,
Yeah.
you know, working for whatever reason, and that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, again, I think that's an important thing for us to remember. We've also touched on this already. You have talked about the connection between between the connection between the emotional, mental, physical health piece with the autoimmune piece. You can't carry those stressors. I cannot tell you how many women I know in our generation, that 45 to 65-year-old, who are dealing with some sort of autoimmune
Mhm.
because of
Yeah.
all the things that we have carried and stuffed and not processed. And there is and you think you're getting away with it when you're young. You're really just building yourself up, setting yourself up for what's to
Yeah.
come later.
I
Because
really thought I was getting away with it, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And you get to a max point and your body's like, no more. We need
Yeah.
to stop and pay attention. And there's consequences to this, and we need to address those. So you've seen that direct impact. What Talk to me about that. That's like such a like, oh my gosh. Because once you're in it, you're like, okay, that's where I'm at now. So where do we go from here? So talk to me about
Mhm.
doing that, because all those other responsibilities don't go away as you're dealing with this.
No. No.
Those things are still
Mm-mm.
present. For you, you're
Yeah.
still caring for she's an adult now, but your daughter is
Mhm.
still, needs you, and so that doesn't
Mhm.
go away. Not to mention you're a grandmother and you have other children. I mean, all those things are part of the deal. So talk to me about
Yeah.
like, okay, here we are. What are we doing now to address
Yeah.
this and also take care of myself from here moving forward? And what have I learned from this? Because we didn't talk about mental, emotional, physical health connections. They've
No.
always been treated in as isolated incidences. And it's only,
Mhm.
again, I keep saying the last 10 years, but it feels like the last 10 years or so, that 15 years, a little bit, that we started, oh, wait a minute. These things are all feeding off of each other. And we need to look at this whole list of things that are happening in our bodies and the
Yeah.
impact it's having, and not just treat these one offs with 55 different prescriptions, but nobody working to help you make the connect points.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I have just become really diligent about it, you
Mm,
know? I get up earlier now. Would I like the extra hour sleep? Probably. But
mhm.
is it better for me to get up an hour early and do the things that I need to do for me? Yeah. So I'm going to do
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
There's certain things that they're not negotiable. I'm going to do them
Yeah,
for myself, and I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
yeah.
And
Sorry, not sorry.
exactly, so what I eat and put into my body now is really important to me,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
I've had to make a huge lifestyle change. I've had to go gluten free and dairy free. Um, and I got gluten the other day. You can always tell because I like do
Isn't
this,
it
I swell
wonderful
up.
when these things you're like, "Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah,
why I don't do
yeah,
that."
yeah. I call it gluten. But it was on accident. So
Yeah, yeah.
but and I have never in my lifetime taken so many vitamins and supplements. It takes me all day long to get them all down. Really seriously. But I feel so much better,
Yeah.
and so there's just certain things that I make sure that I do every single
Right.
day without fail. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's
for
making those
everybody. it looks different for everybody. Self-care looks different for everybody. It's about, learning what's important to you and what your values are. And, yeah.
Yeah, making those connect points. Yeah, because that's so important. I mean, what are my values? What are things that nourish me? Okay, how does that feed into my values? And they're all connected. But yeah, being really
Yeah.
mindful about that and being patient. And I had a friend a few months ago, and I've talked about this a few times now, where her kids are to the point now where they're both in high school. One's driving. She's had them. They're I think 18 and 15. She's worked, for 20, 25 years now. She's all of a sudden got this time in her day now that she's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with it. I feel like I should do this and this. And I'm like, why don't you do something for yourself? How about, what are you doing for yourself during this time? This time is opened up. What is something you enjoy? She goes, I don't even remember. I'm like, okay. So between now and the next time I see you, I want you to think about activities that nourish you. Go back to what nourished you before you were in this season 20 years ago. Those things still stick. Or just start with something really simple. Just sit.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything. I mean, just go sit outside with a drink of water or a cup of coffee or a glass of tea or whatever. And sit and listen to the birds or close your eyes for 20 minutes and take a power nap. I mean, start with something simple, but think about those things. And how about you invest instead of thinking about what else you can do? Think about what it is. How is it? I've got this time back. This is a gift. How can I nourish myself with it?
Yeah. I think the other thing they have to learn too is how to shut their mind off when they do have that alone time.
Yeah.
Because I was like that for a long time too. And I still am like that sometimes where I have, alone, quiet time and my brain starts thinking, well, I really should be doing this. And then I'm like, wait a minute. No, you shouldn't. You got to learn how to catch it. But that can be really hard for women in the beginning to understand that it's okay to just do absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Just let your mind rest. And because then all of a sudden, you've got some space. But yeah, it's always interesting how we view that. But how can we support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically? You got to a point where you determined that not only you could be a resource to yourself, that you could also be a resource to other people in caregiver situations. So for me, that is a prime example of how you show up for yourself and other women unapologetically, and just by how you model your life, how people can watch you and see you taking care of yourself. At what point did you make that shift and decide, not only can I be a resource to myself, I can be a resource to other people too? When did that happen, and how did that unfold?
I think I've been that way my whole life. Like I started the ranch and turned that into a nonprofit to do alternative therapy. And
the equine therapy, my gosh, that's so powerful.
Yeah. But serving other people and helping other people, that fills me up. That gives me joy. That gives me energy. And I always want to help, I want to help everybody see that they have huge potential inside of them. And it's just learning, that it's there and that you're worthy. And it doesn't matter what you want to do, find something that you want to do that, that gets you excited. And I knew that, okay, I have figured this out. Now I got to share it. I got to, there are so many other women out there, know, that are going through and men too.
Yeah. Yeah. The caregiving goes on both sides of the fence on that one.
Yeah. And so, that's just me. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
If I can figure it out and you're not sure, I'm going to help you no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. But I think something that you said is so important. Find that thing that energizes you and lights you up, and also take care of yourself within that so it continues to energize you and light you up. Because, you still have to take care of yourself within that. I think there can be of like, I'm doing this thing that I love. Yes. And you want to keep loving it and you want to keep
Yeah.
showing up that way. So
Yeah.
make sure you're taking care of
Yes.
yourself in a way that allows you to continue to do that. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And we've talked about this a little bit too, but the importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values. Clear what you are engaged in is so aligned with your why and your values. It's very authentic to you, as you've just talked about. Did you understand that earlier in your life that that was the deal, or at what point did you really see this alignment between the things you were passionate about and how that could show up in your work and how you work and serve in that capacity?
It just always showed up in any job that I had. I don't know how to explain it. For a long time, I was in restaurant management. And so I had a lot of young girls come in, to waitress and do things like that. And, the common thread with them is not recognizing that, they have true value and that they, it just seemed like I don't even know how to explain it, Melissa. It just came natural, in every job that I've had,
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really interesting, because I know what you mean. I've always been passionate about women and women being well and knowing their value. And no matter what space I've been working in, I started out in human resources and then I've been with nonprofits, and there's always been a space for that to show up in some way. So I think when you understand what it is so that importance of connecting what it is you're passionate about, what really lights you up, and then finding ways for that to come out in your work, in your things you're engaged with, community wise, people you surround yourself with, all of that, because there can be multiple avenues for that to show up in, but it's that knowledge and knowing and tapping into that piece of you. Would you say that's how you showed up as a kid too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with animals too,
Okay.
Same with animals.
I think that I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think when you're around animals a lot and you're caring for animals and have that responsibility from a young age, that creates a different kind of awareness too, I think, and responsibility. And I also seeing the value of that. And so from the horse, did you grow up with horses?
No,
okay.
I did not.
So how did the horses come into play? Because that's a big responsibility.
It is. Well, I did have a friend growing up who had a couple horses, and anytime I could go to her farm, I did. Okay. So, I was always in love with horses. And then when I got older, I just decided that I wanted to ride, and so any chance I had, I rode. Even when we went on vacation, and it didn't matter. There was one vacation, it's the middle of the winter. I'm like, we're going to go trail riding. And they're all looking at me like, are you crazy?
Mom's
but I was always horse crazy. And, so I started riding, and then I moved to the country on purpose so I could have my own horses. And it just riding came really natural to me.
Sure. But that was a form of self-care too. I mean, that,
yes, it is. I was just talking about that. It's like I did a lot of training for 15 years. I trained horses, and you have to be in the moment. It's like meditating, you have to be very clear. Your intent, you have to let go of everything out here. You're in the moment, and you have to be connected. And it is a form of therapy for sure. Yeah. And I think that got me through a lot of the things that I had experienced in my life, in my later life, in my adulthood. Those horses were my lifeline, they were my therapy for sure.
Yeah. So the power of connecting to that when you were a kid and how that manifested in your life later, and then able to see the power of that and help other people with that. I think you and I talked about this when you were on the radio show with me, but my husband got an opportunity to be part of a career coach he had when we lived, 7-8 years ago now. part of your work with this particular career coach was to spend some time with horses. And
Yeah.
I will never forget the weekend that he went to Maryland to be at the horse farm with these people that she partnered with for this particular part of working with them. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
and to this day, this man is drawn to horses. We were in the middle of a hike in Ireland and horses were walking up to the fence and he stood there and connected with the horses. I mean, the power and impact of that. So I mean, looking back on your life and how that became important to you as you're young and the power and the way that is taking care of you, through that and how that manifested too is really powerful.
Yeah.
You knew that was something you valued. So you sought that out and it's become such an important part of your own wellness, not to mention how you've helped other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the universe has a strange way of bringing people and things and circumstances into your life that you need.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that one sticks out to me as a big one for you. Man, you just never know the impact that those things are going to have. Thank you for sharing that. All right.
Yeah.
Living out of your own expectations versus others. This is something that, I mean, like we've talked about, there's a lot of stigmas and outer cultural narratives about how you should show up when you're taking care of a loved one versus what's reality. And a lot of judgment from people just culturally that it's like, you don't know anything about this. You have never been in this situation. Why is it that you think that you have that you should have an opinion about this? And you're getting a snapshot of a moment. You have no idea what their day-to-day is like. And so really within that, like, okay, I'm going to have to really redefine this for myself for a place that's healthy and live and make sure, because so much of these things that we do to ourselves guilt wise and stigma wise come from these cultural narratives that we're surrounded with. So much of that. So talk to me about that expectations journey piece for you.
Well, as you were talking about this, my mom's voice is in my head. What will people think, Lynette? And,
yes.
What you shouldn't do that. What will people think, And, now I don't care, I don't care what anybody thinks, but that's a really hard one for people, especially I think it's really hard for parents who have a child with a disability, because, you're supposed to do things a certain way and it doesn't always work for that child. Right. Yeah. And so just, that's when, you start to become an advocate for the child and an advocate for you and what will work with your situation. And I think that society is getting better about recognizing that, especially with kids, they don't all learn the same, and, you can't put them under one umbrella. You have to find what's going to work best for them and nurture them. And I think that when you're a caregiver, you have to look at your situation the same way. What's going to work best for you and who you're caring for, and then do it that way. I mean, my daughter has always been a night owl. It's been a constant battle to get her up in the morning. And it just got to the point where I was so stressed out the night before. If we had a morning appointment, thinking, oh my God, can I get her up? She's going to get up. Are we going to get there in time? And I mean, it was just this constant. And finally, I just thought, this is stupid. If they can't accommodate us in the afternoon, we're not going.
Right. So it's like, no more morning appointments. You don't need to do that to ourselves.
And if she wants, as an adult, she would work the overnight shift. She, that's who she is. So if she wants to stay up until 2:00 in the morning and sleep until 11 or noon, I don't care. And if you're going to judge me for that, I don't care either, because that's what works in our life. And so I really encourage, the caregivers to look at what works and what doesn't, and
Yeah.
then build your life around that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I
there's
had a
nothing
real
wrong with that.
No, no,
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a great example. And I had a conversation with a guest about this, Cindy Ingram, in the fall, where she deals her in her family. They're on various levels of the spectrum. Her husband and her kids are on various levels of the spectrum, autistic
Okay.
wise. And so they
Uh-huh.
have just socially, there's just different things that ways that they have to operate. And so they had to have a very serious discussion with their family about the fact of when we come for Christmas, we're going to get an Airbnb and get our own space
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
we get to a point where we need to be done. We need to
Mhm.
recharge. We need to take a break. It is no reflection on you. It is
Yeah.
no reflection on anybody other than this is what, if either, and that's either okay or we just don't come. But this is the way we have to do things. And
Mhm.
it was a little bit of a battle, but over time, the family realized we either get them this way or we don't get them at all. And,
Good for
and
them,
yeah,
though,
and
you know?
but it took
Yeah.
time. They did a few
Yeah.
years, and it was just a battle. It was miserable, and
Yeah.
it just came to a point where she's like, "Nope, we are not doing this anymore." And no one
Mhm.
knows your situation better than you.
No.
And
Right.
so, and sometimes that requires some hard conversations with the people we love, or the doctor's office, or the hair
Yeah.
place, or whatever it
Ex
is. But
exactly.
getting to that point where this is my life day to day,
Mhm.
and those that are around me that I'm surrounding myself trust me and know that we're doing what's well and good for us, and you just have to release the rest of it. But getting to that point where you have that confidence, but I know what you mean about that.
Yeah.
As soon as you said that, oh, what I heard the voices too. Like that was such a prominent voice.
Yeah.
That we, oh, what will they think? Oh,
Yeah.
what will they? I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's like that is exhausting, and it's like
Mhm.
having chains around you
It
because
yeah. It's
it,
very freeing when you decide that you no longer care what
yeah,
anybody thinks, you
yeah.
know?
You're going to release it,
Yeah.
and we're going to live the healthiest version of ourselves. We're going to show up well. We're going to be
Yeah.
kind, compassionate, but we're also going to stand up for ourselves and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
be enslaved by other people's expectations or notions of what's correct when they have not walked
Right.
in our shoes. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Right.
that. So good. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
that. All right. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. And when I'm talking with women, I'm like, for me, it starts here. In order to value yourself to a point where you're willing to prioritize yourself, you
Mhm.
got to come to this kind of come to Jesus moment with accepting all the parts and portions and seasons and decisions of your life. And
Yeah.
we talked about this earlier, dealing with the things we didn't see coming. Um, and getting okay with that, and you don't have to love every part of it, but you at least got to get to a point where you release the judgment. And something that really helped me in my own journey, which is different than yours but also still just having to accept those layers, is okay, and my therapist really helped me with this, replacing judgment with curiosity. Get
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
And when you get curious, that creates points of releasing the judgment. I'm like, okay, given this situation, I see why it is that I would, when it comes to forgiving, like, oh, I'm hating this moment right now, or I'm mourning what I thought was going to be.
Mhm.
Getting curious about that rather than beating yourself up about that. You had to do that. You had to work
Mhm.
through what I call accepting those layers. Talk to me about that
Yeah.
layers journey and the impact that has had on you, not only in your relationship with yourself, but with other people.
Um, I think a lot of it was, learning to accept who I was, for one,
Yeah.
and, you know, doing, the work on me and believing that I was just as worthy, you
Yeah.
know, and that, it was okay for me to do the things that I wanted to do, and that people didn't have to agree with me, and it
Mhm.
was still okay. Um, because you're going to be judged one way or the other anyway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so learning to stop living for everyone else was
Mm.
was another part of it for me also. But within that, learning to just be really grateful for what I already had in my life,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
even down to the little things, you know.
Mhm.
And so still to this day, I try to every morning, before I get out of bed, do gratitude work,
Mhm.
and set an intention. I think that we have way more control over how our day is going to go and how we move through life than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you can decide who you want to be, how you want to feel, what you want to do in the world, and how you want to show up. That really truly is a choice.
Mhm.
It doesn't just happen, it's a choice to do things different, make changes, become a better version of who you are. Um, so yeah, I would say the gratitude work for one started me in the right direction, if that makes
Mhm.
sense, you
Sure.
know? And
Yeah.
there's always things to be grateful. I don't care who you are,
Yeah.
or what is going on in your life. There's always at least one thing to be grateful for. And when you focus on that, it changes something in here, you
Mhm.
know? Because I
Yeah.
was angry for a
Yeah.
long time. I didn't like my
Yeah.
life, you know? And
Yeah.
when you focus on that, you just fuel that fire,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, and I think it's that thin line between processing and feeling the anger and then moving through it
Yeah.
and moving
Yeah.
forward. And you have to
Yeah.
get to a point where you need to feel it. You can't stuff it, but you got to
Yeah. You
move
can't
through it.
ignore it. Right.
Yeah, you move through
Yeah.
it and move forward and move to that next space where you have the nuance of, yes, all of this over here is true and it's hard, but also
Mhm.
so is this. Like we can
Yeah.
hold and getting to that point where you can see those things, see those
Mhm.
blessings, see those things that you have, in both spaces. I think that's such an important piece. And this had to be tricky. Your daughter's not your only child. So also navigating those other relationships and
Yeah.
creating space where you can show up for those the way you want to, but also
Mhm.
forgiving yourself for the times that you didn't because you
Yeah.
just were trying to figure it out. I'm sure that
Yeah.
has been a part of your journey as well.
Oh, huge, huge. Because, like I said, I just wanted to be a mom,
Yeah.
and, I loved spending time with my boys. And so,
Mhm.
I that was during the 10-year period where I ran myself ragged when I
Yeah.
shouldn't have. But, it
Sure.
was important for me to show up for them,
Mhm.
because they did kind of get the short end of the
Yeah.
stick, you
Yeah.
know? Um, I had no control over that, you
Sure.
know? If she was sick and ended up in the hospital, that's where we were. And so
Yeah.
anytime I could, I tried to make them understand that, they were just as loved and worthy and everything as she was. And I think really,
Mhm.
Melissa, in the long run, I have to say that my boys are incredible.
Mm.
They have huge hearts. They've learned so much from watching all of this throughout
Sure.
their life, you know?
Yeah.
So, but man, that mother guilt that
Uh,
can really do a number on you, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's I think for you it has to be part of that layers piece of like, gosh, I did the best I could. But it
Yeah.
also tells me this about you talking about your sons and them having the big hearts and learning. You had to have been a pretty darn good parent for them to be able to garner that because there can be situations where kids come into those situations and feel like they just got lost and forgotten. So
Yeah.
you did something well. I want to give you kudos for that, that they were
Well, thank
able
you.
that they were able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see that. And because here's the thing about kids, and we know those of us that have grown kids are very aware of it. They remember what you can say things till the cows come home. They remember what they saw. They remember
Mhm.
what their experience was. They
Right.
know, like, if your words and your actions are not lining up, the actions are what take predominance in their memory. So
Yeah.
yeah, and so I think too, I would imagine now as you get to this point where you are to me are a prime example of living out feel. finding out empowerment, embracing layers. You have done the work, you have done that, and you're seeing that now in your relationships with your
Yeah.
grown children, you know,
Yeah.
and being engaged with them. So I think too is just, you know, remembering that's a journey. Is there anything you want to add to that? Because that to me is very evident.
Oh, what would I want to add to that? I don't know. I just I try to be me, and authentic. And, if I love you, you're going to know it. And um, that took a while to get there.
Sure.
It did. It took a while to be okay with who I am, comfortable in my own skin, all of that. And it's a journey.
Yeah,
I hope I still continue to grow, you know?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
So,
there's
but I
something,
think that you put the effort in to what is important to you, you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
what you value goes back to what you
Yeah.
value.
Mhm.
And, you know, and identifying that and prioritizing that. And I think too, for our generation, we had to break some generational habits, even with, you know, without adding the caregiver layer onto your layer. We already had some generational habits to break because
Mhm.
before that, in our parents and grandparents and before generations, do these things, you didn't prioritize your wellness as a
No.
woman, especially.
Uh-uh.
You didn't do that. You
No.
knocked yourself out and you lived as a martyr and you did all these things and you hoped people would read your mind and show up and magically help. And then you got mad
Yeah.
when they didn't. I
And then
mean,
you got mad when they couldn't read your mind.
exactly. And so we've had to do, as collectively, we've had to do our own work in that space. And then that
Yeah.
becomes even more necessary when you've had the experiences you've had in terms of the caregiving piece. So I think that's all part of that layers journey, but because you've done the work and you've seen it not only play out well for yourself, but also in how this life that has unfolded for you, that what you have gained from that. And I told you before we started recording, you know, I follow you on Instagram. I get to see the joyful parts of the day, the fun parts
Yeah.
with your kids, with your daughter, and all the pieces of that. Because it, you know, I think sometimes it can be really hard when you don't have resources supporting you. You just get stuck in
Mhm.
the mire of the hard stuff and you miss those joyful moments because
Yeah.
you're just so tired and ragged. And because you've done the work and you've asked for help and you've gotten the resources and now you provide the resources, you're able to experience those moments and those joyful
Mhm.
parts of life that come with this life that
Yeah.
you have.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I look forward to them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece. You do that really well. Thank you for that. All right. We're down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you. I know. Boom, boom, boom. No, I don't really type
I
it.
can do it. Boom, boom, boom.
I know you can.
Did I go?
Here we go.
Okay. Riding horses, hiking, anything to do with the water, boating, paddleboarding, saunas,
Mm.
facials, time with friends, a good
Ah,
cup of coffee.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that was more than 5.
It was. That's good though. It's good that you have
Yeah.
more. I love that. That's
Yeah.
so great. All right. In 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
And how I want to feel the next 6 months?
Yeah.
Oh, healthy, strong, resilient,
Mm,
spunky,
mm,
um, peaceful,
mm.
grateful,
Yeah.
in love. Yeah.
Oh, I love those. Oh, Lynette, so good. All right. This is all going to be on our resources page at embracinglayers.com, but tell people where they can find you and follow you and get and some of the resources that you have available to them.
Okay. You can find me on Facebook under Lynette Weldon or Coaching with Lynette. We have a private Facebook group for caregivers who want extra support and want a safe place to talk about things. So
Mm,
just message me and I'll put you in that group. I have a 5-week caregiver course that goes through all
mhm.
the different aspects that we talked about basically today.
Sure.
I have a new caregiver calm app coming out. So it's like you get me in
Ooh,
your pocket. Every
wow.
day you get a text message, affirmations, meditation, stuff like that. I'm really excited about that. Uh,
Yeah.
and I have other resources too. There's a ton of resources in our group.
Okay.
Or even if you just email me,
Okay.
coaching with Lynette, you can find me at LynetteWeldon.com. And I am more than happy to send out whatever you're looking for,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, folks,
Yeah.
you've heard it here. There, if you're in a caregiving space, you have friends that are caregivers, we loved ones, we have resources for you. And Lynette is one of those resources. And we're so lucky to have those. So go to that page go to our website, go to embracinglayers.com, check those things out, reach out to her, utilize these things. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to tell your friends about it, and maybe you nudge them, support them. If there's ways that you can
Yeah.
support them, can you go over for an hour and fold their laundry so they can go for a walk? Can you, or take a shower or something? So if you're not a caregiver, but you know friends that are, how can you support them? How can you help them in a way that maybe it could be supportive of them, but also letting them know about those resources? So some things to think about as we wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for being with me today. I always enjoy our time.
Oh, thank you. I love you, Melissa.
All right. All right. You take good care. I love you too. We love you. We love you out there, ladies. We want to help you. We want to be a support to you, and we've got resources for you. So take good care of yourselves, utilize those resources, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks for giving some of your time to us today. We hope this has felt supportive to you. Take good care. Hello, Melissa Crook here. Thank you so much for joining us on the F.E.E.L podcast today, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers. I hope you found today's framework and resources supportive and informative. To learn more about all that we offer here at the Embracing Layers Network, visit embracinglayers.com. You can go to our contact form to schedule me as a speaker for your next conference, workshop, or seminar. You can go to our book page to order our book that Jessica Garrison, our wonderful and talented writer and author, authored with my support. And engage with this framework in written form with your journal or in a book club with other women, inviting them on this journey with you. You can look at our resources page for all of the helpful and insightful resources our guests offer and share. You can find the schedule for our weekly Together We F.E.E.L women's panel conversations that we're holding each Monday on our YouTube channel. And you can find the links to all the spaces and places you can follow, engage with us on social media, and join our engagements that are happening on our Substack site. There is also a donation page where you can donate to support our work to ensure we can continue to bring you these incredible guests, conversations, and support. Thanks again for joining me this week. Share with your friends and give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Your feedback helps us ensure we're bringing you the content that will best support you and having an empowered, embracing layers journey. Take good care, and thanks for giving us some of your valuable time today. We truly appreciate you so deeply.